Does 15 kilos a month sound like a regular supply to you?
15 kilos. Whew. That's a lot of blow. Gonna put a big smile on a lot of faces.
We can handle it.
Jamie versus Dushane, an ever-growing battle between two very ambitious men fighting for the same dark corners in the less glamorous parts of east side of London. Taking on the life of a roadman is a matter of life and death, and keeping a legacy running and surviving the streets on your own is next to impossible without some street smarts attached to your brain and a well-organized team behind your back. It's perhaps why the streets put such a heavy emphasis on respect and unity amongst gang culture. Every organization needs a strong leader to propel, lead, and manage the collective towards specific goals and objectives. And at Team Summerhouse and at Team ZT, we have two more than capable leaders in Jamie and Dushane. Jamie being the interim leader of the ZT, also known as a Zero Tolerance Group, where he acts as a stand-in leader in the absence of the former organizational boss Modie, who's locked up for 18 years. Dushane, on the other hand, is a seasoned veteran and a very ambitious leader who used to run the streets of Summerhouse but lost it all and is now back with a vengeance. Both of them have a very unique type of leadership style that has taken their respective teams very far in the hierarchical order of the streets in Top Boy Season 3. They've also taken slightly different ways of getting there. Now, who the real top boy is subjective, but if you're as curious as me, you've probably thought to yourself, which gang is under the best form of management? In other words, who has the best leader, Team ZT or Team Summerhouse? I'm going to let you decide that in the comment section down below, but here's my take on it. Top Boy is a crime drama that originally aired in the UK in 2011 but made a huge comeback 2019 on Netflix. It reveals a truly magnetic story of two drug dealers in Summerhouse, Dushane, who's played by Ashley Walters, and Jamie, who's played by Michael Ward, as they battle to maintain dominance over the drug trade in Hackney, East London, UK. The series is set in a fictional low-income estate called Summerhouse, where their lives are intertwined with other unforgettable characters. Jamie is one of the street kids who grew up in the neighborhood and lives with his two brothers in Summerhouse. He was a part of a drug gang whose leader just went into prison for 18 years. The guy who initially took over, Leighton, someone Jamie has little respect for, begins his tenure as a new leader with suggesting that they should continue to buy their supply from the connect that they've been previously dealing with. Jamie believes that the old connect's prices are too high, and he knows of other suppliers that he can get food to earn favorable margins on his peas. Food being the nickname for drugs and peas the nickname for money. The new leader Leighton isn't as change-oriented as Jamie is, and he prefers that things stay the same until Modie, the former boss, gives them new instructions. He argues that if Jamie cuts out the old connect who Modie used to deal with, they'll all be in for some trouble and things will get too violent for them to handle. And I believe that it's around this scene where Jamie steps up and we get to see Jamie's leader arc really start to take shape. Now, before I get too nerdy on you, I just want to quickly introduce the two frameworks that I'm going to use to explain my perspective that encapsulates Jamie and Dushane's leadership styles. The first one is called Transformational, and the second one is called Transactional. If you've read organizational psychology in school or are familiar with Bernard Bass's works in science or familiar with scientists in the same field, you might have an idea of where this is going. Leadership can obviously be described in many ways, but for the purpose of this video, I'm choosing to view it as either transactional or transformational. A transactional leader is usually concerned about the status quo. They tend to cling to the good old days of how things used to be and thus work really hard to keep things as they were. In the beginning of Season 3, we see a really depressed and distressed Dushane who, in a way, is a fallen giant that's almost forgotten within the memory of the streets. He's constantly referring to the glory days throughout the show, and that reference serves as a benchmark for where he believes him and his crew belongs. The fact that he has made that climb before and knows how to run the streets gives him an electric presence and a belief that he and his old crew will reach those heights again. The crew doesn't have to be sold a dream when the proof is right in front of them. If we take a closer look at Dushane's psychological profile with the help of the 5-factor model that is used to describe human personality, I'd personally say that conscientiousness is Dushane's strongest psychological trait. I know some of you are well versed in this topic, but for those of you who don't know what conscientiousness is a fundamental personality trait that reflects the tendency to be responsible, organized, and hardworking. It's also strongly linked to goal-directed behavior, which we will see more of later on. Like the other basic personality traits within the 5-factor model, conscientiousness has multiple facets. Conscientiousness comprises self-control, industriousness, responsibility, and reliability. Descriptions that, in my opinion, fits Dushane really well. He also has a remarkable emotional stability where some of the toughest situations doesn't seem to affect him in any real significant way. When Sully, Jack, or Driss are freaking out about various things, Dushane is always there to calm them down and help them think more rationally about the situation at hand. This is a trait that serves him and his team really well throughout the show. A documented discovery within the literature of transactional leadership is that transactional leaders tend to operate within existing boundaries of processes, structures, and goals, meaning that most of what is out there has already been discovered and should be executed in a specific sequential manner. There is no reason to shake things up or reinvent the wheel. The way forward is to build upon what's already working. Max Weber, a gestalt behind the bureaucratic organizational theories, argued that the best way to run an organization is when everyone is subordinate to the rules and processes of that said organization. The organization would look like a pyramid where the leader at the top of the pyramid main objective is to manage and supervise the members as well as facilitate effective group performances. The role of a transactional leader is primarily passive, as we can see in Dushane's case. He himself doesn't stand on the dark corners and serve customers. Instead, he's the one that sets policies and assessment criteria and then only intervenes in the event of a performance problem. This is a really good approach when the methods or strategies that are being used have been tried and tested. But it also suggests that there's only one way to do something, and there is no point in constructively critiquing the leader or listening to the people who are slightly beneath you in the pyramid due to their subordinate positions and status within the organization. This practice can create a divide between the upper and lower parts of the organization, since it reinforces a hierarchical order where communication and conflicts get ignored or follow an upstream line and won't get addressed until the leader in charge has given it attention, which could at that point already be too late.
Can you hear me out?
No.
Yeah?
No. You try listening to me for a change.
All right. Go on, I'm listening.
When I'm talking to Shane, it don't mean you're listening.
You know, man.
Yeah, because you always do it. I talk and you just do what you decided to do already. It's disrespectful.
Sully addresses this issue briefly when he confronts Dushane for being too self-centered and selfish. He criticizes Dushane for always looking at things from his own perspective and neglecting the people around him. This is also something we get to see a glimpse of on display when we're thrown into an altercation between Dushane and Driss. Driss, who's been running the crew when Dushane was hiding in Jamaica, sees his authority evaporate in front of him as soon as Dushane gets back. And the root cause of this evaporation in status isn't necessarily immediate or obvious. The change is subtle, but as time goes by, Driss is ordered to do less and less meaningful work with higher demands set upon him. And because of the new hierarchical order Dushane has in mind, he establishes that he's the leader now, along with Sully, and reinforces that Driss needs to step back. Everything Driss suggests or says from that point means less and less due to his lower position, and this eventually creates a rift in the relationship that is very common under transactional management. Why this outcome is so common within transactional leadership in modern time is a bit difficult to explain without dragging on for too long, but at the core, transactional management, from my own understanding, is heavily reliant on results over anything else. Meaning that if you have an axis in front of you that A represents culture, relationships, and another one, let's call it B, that represents output and results, the transactional leader will tilt more towards the output result side of things in an organization at the cost of relationship side, sometimes even neglect the relationship aspect altogether and solely rule based on position and authority. Dushane's transactional leadership emphasizes organization, performance evaluation, and rewards. It favors task and outcome-oriented actions over unity and togetherness. It's why it's so cut and clear. Everyone knows what they're supposed to be doing within the organization, the roles and expectations are clearly outlined, which is brilliant, but everyone seems to be obedient more so due to respect and fear more than love and admiration. Which in itself raises an interesting question. When you're put into a leadership position and have to lead and manage a group of people to war, would you rather the group fear you or love you? In other words, is fear stronger than love? Comment your own thoughts in the comment section down below. I'm really curious to know what you think. Anyways, the tilt towards the output of the organization over the relationship and culture side of it is also one of many reasons for why Dushane struggled to recruit new members to his organization when business was moving slow. The absolute ideal is to have a balance between culture and output, but when it's more output oriented than it is unity oriented, the culture starts to erode as soon as the production and distribution slows down. The appeal comes from the money and not the belonging. Thus, when Jack and Driss are out recruiting, They don't talk too much about the protection or other common benefits that gangs with high levels of inclusion or culture usually provide. Instead, the pitch solely focuses on peace, aka the money aspect. This differs from Jamie's transformational leadership style that has a stronger culture which puts a larger emphasis on unity and togetherness, which is more appealing for a young person who's looking to earn some money, but most importantly, find somewhere to fit in and belong. The group that Jamie was a part of before he stepped up as a leader was disorganized and lacked a sense of direction and identity. The crew was in a dire need of rebuilding from the inside and out. Jamie regroups the crew, re-inspires them towards new goals, and lastly, rebranded them to become the ZT.
Jamie, innit? Jamie, I don't know no Jamie. Where's Jamie from? I don't know Jamie.
If we take a closer look at Jamie's personality, he comes across in my eyes as a really heartfelt and creative and highly solution-oriented guy. If I had to make a guess on his 3 most dominant traits based on what we've seen so far, my guess would be that he would score pretty high in openness, conscientiousness, and low levels of neuroticism within the scale of the Big 5 psychological personality metrics. Of those 3 variables mentioned, my guess would be that he'd score the highest on openness. Openness, for those of you who don't know, is one of the domains which are used to describe personality in the 5-factor model that I've mentioned before. Openness involves 5 facets or dimensions, including active imagination, aesthetic sensitivity, attentiveness to inner feelings, preference for variety, and intellectual curiosity, traits that I think describe Jamie reasonably well. He's also very people-oriented and tends to go out of his way to be seen and felt by the group around him, which explains why he's so liked by his members, bar Layton, who, in my opinion, is just a hater.
Nobody likes sarcasm. Do you understand?
His transformational leadership approach allows him to focus more on inclusivity and motivating and engaging followers to inspire for a new order instead of settling for the old ways of doing things. So, just to recap what I've explained so far, transformational leaders work to enhance the motivation and engagement their followers have by directing the group toward a shared vision. While transactional leadership tend to operate within existing boundaries of processes and structures, transformational leadership challenges the current state and is change-oriented. The last part, change-oriented, obviously sounds good on paper, but change can have negative aspects as well. All change isn't good change, and sometimes there are clear reasons for why things have stayed the same and should stay the same. For example, Dushane was okay with Jamie serving customers as long as Jamie did it on his corners. I guess Dushane understood that having a variety in the market allowed for the best product to shine, which is good for everyone as long as you have a good product. But Jamie wanted a monopoly on the market without the backup to be able to support him, which in the long run just hurt him. Change may force out tired habits and impose better ones, but it can also be stressful, costly, and even destructive. The idea wasn't bad, but Jamie wanted to change too much at the same time. He had his eyes on taking over the entire city in one move, which led him to have an unnecessary amount of problems all at the same time. Change can teach one to adapt and help develop resilience, but only if the person responsible for the change understands his own capacity for growth and learning. When change makes us better, it's usually because we learn how to turn a challenging situation to our own advantage, not changing things merely for change's sake. I gotta say though that the screenwriters did a really good job in bringing forth the human side within both characters to light. Even though we're almost supposed to root for Dushane since he is the original protagonist of the show, other people like me who watched season 3 before they even found out that there was a season 1 and 2 automatically assumed that Jamie was the protagonist. We're introduced to Jamie's rapid character growth along with the exposure of his human and family side, which, in comparison to Dushane, makes Dushane come across as the greedy and unresponsible antagonist. I also want to put a disclaimer that it's very rarely that you could look at someone and pin him or her to an isolated box or category. For example, there are a couple of instances where Jamie's leadership tend to bleed into the transactional sphere and where Dushane's leadership bleeds into the transformational sphere. I chose to paint a fairly black and white picture with some grey undertones just to make it easier to understand and analyze them both. Both characters understands what leadership is at the core. It's about getting things done through a collective team effort. They both see it as a social process that builds on a healthy relationship between the leaders and the followers. Throughout the show, we get to see that in a well-functioning management structure, whether it's ZT or Summerhouse, the team members garner admiration, trust, and respect for the leader proportionally to the leader's influence and the team's success. My final words on Dushane and Jamie is that the former, in my opinion, is a good boss and the latter a good leader. Now the question is if there's a difference between a good leader and a good boss, or if I'm wrong and the two titles are one and the same. Also, I'm sure I haven't addressed all of what makes Dushane and Jamie such incredible leaders, and there's probably a bunch of you who don't agree with my analysis, but whether you disagree with me or not, I'd like for you to comment your thoughts or phrase your own analysis down below and let's have a discussion about it. If you have seen this show already, don't forget to comment who you believe deserves to be the real top boy, Dushane or Jamie, or perhaps someone else. With that being said, if you like this type of videos, be sure to like the video and subscribe. Peace.